Hi guys, my name is Martin Owokwe and welcome to my YouTube channel. Today, I want to talk about how I was able to get my EB1A Visa approved here in the US. If you're not following this channel, please hit the subscribe button down to follow me for content like this. So today, like I said, I want to share with you the entire process of how I was able to get my EB1A Visa approved. EB1A is a visa for aliens of extraordinary ability. So basically anyone who is not a US citizen who can prove to the US government that they are of extraordinary ability and they don't want to come to the US to continue to work and to live in the US. The EB1A is the first preference for employment-based visas. So there's EB1, EB2, which is the second preference, EB3, which is the third preference, EB4, and EB5. But today we're going to focus strictly on the EB1A visa, the visa for aliens of extraordinary ability. So in 2021, I moved to the US with an F1 student visa. And soon after my studies, I realized how difficult it was to get a green card permanent residency in the US. There was no clear path from F1 student visa to getting a green card. So to get a green card, you either have to go through the employment-based route or you go through the family sponsorship. So it's either you're married to a US citizen or you're married to a US citizen or permanent resident, or either of your parents are able to sponsor you, or you go through either of the employment-based visas that I just mentioned. And amongst all of the employment-based visas, the EB1A is the most selective and the easiest and the fastest, rather not the easiest, sorry, and the fastest route to getting your permanent residency. So last year in August, I had gotten my NIW EB2 petition approved, which is something I'm going to talk in subsequent videos. And I wasn't comfortable with the amount of time that I had to wait between when the petition was approved and when I can apply for my green card. And so I started to explore other options to get it faster. And the only option I had was the EB1A visa. And so I started gathering all of the documentation and the exhibits that I would send to the USCIS to prove my extraordinary ability. Mind you, this visa is a highly selective visa, and it is given to only people who can prove that they have risen to the top of their field. So the first thing I did was to go through all the requirements for granting or for approving this visa. According to the USCIS, in order to get your EB1A approved, so you have to prove to the USCIS that you meet at least 3 of the 10 criteria, which I'm going to list down, shortly. Number one is I have to prove that, and you have to show, when I say prove, you're going to show documentary evidence that you've received a nationally or internationally recognized award. And 2, you're a member of an association where for you to join, you must have achieved a lot in your field and you're being invited to join as against just paying, to be a member of the association. Number 3, you have to show that you have published materials about you on the internet, magazines, you've been invited to speak, at podcasts, TV channels, and radio shows. 4 is that you must have participated as a judge of the work of others. 5, that you have original scientific, scholarly or business related contributions. Number 6, that you've authored scholarship articles. Number 7, that you've held a leading or critical role in a distinguished organization. Number 8, that you've earned high salary when compared to other people in your field. And then number 9 and 10 are for people who are into arts, that you have to show evidence that your work has been displayed at artistic exhibitions. And finally, that you've had commercial success in the performing arts. So these are the 10 criteria for EB1A, and you have to show evidence that you meet at least 3 out of those 10 criteria. In my own case, I submitted evidence to show that 1, there are published materials about me on the internet. 2, that I've participated as a judge for the work of other people. 3, that I've authored scholarly articles. 4, that I have high salary when compared to other people in my field. And then finally, that I've had critical or leading role in distinguished organizations. So I'm going to talk about some of the actual exhibits that I submitted for these criteria. For published materials, I have publications on Nigerian newspapers about some of the works that I've done in the past, reporting on some of the events that I've organized back when I was in Nigeria. And so what I did was I did a screenshot of the newspaper publications and submitted that as evidence. For participation as a judge of the work of others, I've been invited to judge hackathons and competitions back home in Nigeria. And so what I did was to get a screenshot of the email invitation asking me to come judge this event, and also another email thanking me after judging the event, just to show that I actually judged the event. Also, I used to organize TEDx events back home in Nigeria. And so another thing I did was to also get documentations regarding how we went about speaker selections and how we selected topics that would be on the TEDx stage. And so somehow I was able to make that fit into the criteria for participation as a judge for the work of other people. For authorship of scholarly articles, I've had conference presentations. They were published in conference proceedings. And so that acted as authorship of scholarly articles. And then for leading a critical role in distinguished organizations, some of the places I've worked in Nigeria, I was able to get my bosses and my managers to write a letter stating exactly what I did and how my efforts impacted on the organization. And then lastly, I had to show that my salary compared to other people, especially people who live in my locality, that I earn way higher than what the average person earns. So what I needed to do was to submit pay slips, submit my tax returns, submit my offer letter, and also a comparative analysis of what other people in my field do earn. So finally, the USCIS officer, after looking at the individual criteria, is going to do something they call final merit determination, which is looking at your petition as a whole to see if you've risen to the top of your field by looking at the quality and the quantity of the exhibits that you submitted for each of these criteria. So they want to know if you have sustained national or international acclaim, and that if your achievements have been recognized in the field of expertise. And so there are people who, after meeting some of these criteria or meeting at least 3 of these criteria, still get denied because the officer is looking at the petition and saying, if you're claiming to be, for example, you're claiming to be a researcher who has risen to the top of his field, and then you're submitting research work that have 10, 15 citations, right? They'll be convinced that such a person has actually risen to the top of his field in academic research. And so in the final merit examination, you might get denied, even though you've met at least 3 out of the 10 criteria. So I put all of these things together. It was about, if I'm not mistaken, it was about a 400 pages petition, including the actual petition letter and all of the supporting evidence that I had. And then I shipped it to the USCIS. Now let's talk about the costs for the petition. The cost for the EB1A is $1,015. And then if you want to get a decision in 15 working days, you have to pay for premium processing, which is going to cost you $2,805. So altogether, you're looking at paying $3,820 to get your petition to the USCIS and get a decision in 15 working days. Now, there are either of 2 decisions that you can get once you submit your petition. The first one is an outright approval, which is what a lot of people look forward to. The second option would be getting an ROFE, which is a request for more evidence. So when the visa officer is not convinced about some of the materials or some of the evidence you've presented, they're going to send you a letter asking you to present more information or more exhibits about some of the criteria that you claim. And then when you submit that additional evidence, they now take a final look at application and make a decision whether to approve or to deny your petition. So exactly 15 days after I submitted my initial petition, I got an email stating that the USCIS required additional information in order to make a decision in my case. And so they sent me an email stating some of the deficiencies they found in my initial application and gave me an opportunity to talk about some of those deficiencies, which I did and submitted back to USCIS. And exactly 10 days later, I got that email that my petition has been approved. I want to share with you some of the materials and resources that I used that helped me in preparing my case, my EB1A petition. The first is the USCIS Policy Manual for EB1A. And this is where USCIS outlines every single thing they look out for in your petition for each of the criteria that you're interested in. I advise that you read the USCIS Policy Manual from top to bottom. That manual is a gem. A lot of people don't read it, but I think if you want to do your petition yourself, if you don't want to involve a lawyer or you can't afford to hire a lawyer to do it, I would suggest that you go through the USCIS Policy Manual. Another wonderful resource would be the Administrative Appeal Office decision. So they call it the AAO decisions. And this is where people who got a petition denied an appeal to USCIS, USCIS would do an official review of the person's appeal and explain in details why the person's petition was denied, right? And so after doing that, they publish it on the USCIS website. And so you could read, this is where I got a lot of nuances as to how visa officers interpret the criteria and how they evaluate petitions when people submit them. And one thing I was able to do to help people who are also on this path is I was able to download all of the administrative appeal office decisions and summarize them and categorize them according to your field of specialization, that's your profession, country of origin, visa type, just to make it easier for you to find cases like that. So I would suggest that you go to casereviewer.ai, which is a platform that I created to be able to sift through petitions that look like yours. So assuming you're a software engineer and you live in India, you could go to the website and select, there are filters for professions, filter for country of origin, and you'll be able to see people like you who have submitted their cases to the USCIS and understand exactly why their cases were denied. This will help you prepare better for your petition and optimize your chances of getting approved. Remember, this is a very expensive endeavor for most people, and you want to be extremely sure that you're submitting a perfect or near perfect petition that would guarantee you an approval. Finally, I wish you success with your application if and when you decide to submit yours. Feel free to use the comment section below if you have any questions, and I'll be happy to answer you. See you in the next video. Bye.